Yo, what up, dogs? I went and saw Blackberry on Sunday at 3:50, and there was about 12 of us in the audience, and the age range would be like, I would say 35 up. And in general, I think we all left the theater entertained. I was entertained. We laughed. We enjoyed some group laughter, which was nice. I laughed at certain things that no one else laughed at. And there were certain things that other pockets of the crowd laughed at that I didn't find funny. So it was really interesting to see what elements of the movie people found funny. But there was a couple times where we actually all genuinely laughed together. And this movie is another one of those movies, just like Air. We're learning more about how the hot dogs are made again, and this time we are focused on Research in Motion, aka RIM, which is based out of Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, Canada, and they are the masterminds of the first smartphone called the Blackberry. So we are going on this journey about how the Blackberry came to be, the rise and fall of it, and this movie is loosely based on, hold on, I wrote down some notes here. It is loosely based on a novel called Losing the Signal, and it came out in 2015. And the novel itself, from what I've heard, is an actual true telling historical kind of documentation of the rise and fall of Blackberry, and it's very thorough. I haven't read it myself, but I've heard about it. It was on the CBC as I was looking on YouTube for things about Blackberry. They had an interview with the people who wrote the novel, and they were like, the movie has nothing to do with the novel. It's very fictitious, and the movie itself tells you at the very beginning that this is a fictitious take on the real life events of these people that started RIM and started Blackberry. So they tell you right off the hop. And honestly, you're going to get into this movie. It is, I would say, if you're thinking like, what else does this movie remind you of? I would definitely say it's the Canadian version of The Social Network meets Letterkenny. I think that's the best mashup that I can think of, because it is a very Canadian film. It's made by Canadians for the world to enjoy, and honestly, it doesn't feel like a Canadian movie, and that is the great accomplishment because a lot of us out here who are trying to make Canadian films always seem to fall into the trap of, why does this feel like a Canadian movie? And this one, I don't know what it is, but something about it, maybe it's the pacing, the directing, it just really comes across as like, this is a Canadian movie, but it doesn't feel like a Canadian movie. And maybe only Canadians understand what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm talking about, my fellow Canadians. Anyways, let's get to the notes, because this movie, I honestly, I loved every minute of this movie. It's probably one of my favorite movies of 2023. It might be up there right now in the top two. Could be in the top two. We got Sisu as number one for sure. This could be number two right now. So the movie is directed by Matt Johnson, and he also is a co-writer for this film as well. I've never heard of him before, so I don't really know his body of work that well at all. So this is my first time being introduced to him, and honestly, I really enjoyed this movie. So I'm curious to see what his other body of work is like as well. We have starring Jay Baruchel, who plays Mike Lazardis, who is the CEO, or I guess he's a co-CEO of Blackberry, of RIM, and he is like the minds behind the Blackberry itself. He's the hardware guru, so to speak. Like, he's a genius, prodigal son, knows his tech, and he is the brains behind the hardware of the RIM. Then we have Mike Johnson, the director, is also starring in this movie, and he plays a character named Doug, who is also a co-CEO of RIM. He finds out that later that he is an actual co-CEO of RIM, and he is also, I think he's a software hardware guy, and he also really supplies a lot of the comedy in this film. It's really driven by his dialogue and his banter. Really drives the dialogue in this film. And then we also have Glenn Howerton, who is from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I didn't even realize was him at first, who plays Jim Balsillie. And his character portrayal of Jim Balsillie, it's so loud and boisterous, and I want to say American, sorry, but he's very just yelling all the time, like, F this, F that, get this done, blah, blah, blah. I'm selling all these units right now. He comes off as a very American Canadian. And I don't know if Jim Balsillie in real life was actually like that kind of a tyrant to get Rim off the ground and get Blackberry into everyone's hands. But honestly, the market penetration that Blackberry had, which was like 57% of the global smartphone market, was Blackberry. So that guy had to be pretty aggressive to get to that level. And honestly, it's quite an impressive feat on the Canadian business side of things at how important that Rim and Blackberry really were to the smartphone revolution. And they did a lot of things that really changed how we use phones today, right? Because like this movie takes place in I think it was 1998 to 2008, that 10-year span of the dominance, the rise and fall of BlackBerry, which is really cool. I have to say, what else? Oh, I got some notes here. Hold on. So the story really revolves around Mike, Doug, and Jim. And this first half of the movie, the first quarter of the movie is Mike and Doug trying to pitch the first concept of the BlackBerry, which was called like the Pocket Carrier or something like that. It wasn't called BlackBerry yet, but they pitched it to Jim, who was working at a different company, and he had no cares for it. He's like, who cares? You'll never figure it out. It's not going to work, blah, blah, blah. But Mike and Doug, they just keep plugging on and going about their work because they already have a contract with some other company for making modems, right? So Jim loses his job because he does some nefarious tactics at work, gets fired, and then he goes and seeks out Mike and Doug and is like, look, I want to be a part of this idea. Like he has the epiphany moment of I should be a part of this. I can make this happen. I want 50% of your company, make me co-CEO, and we're going to make this happen. And eventually, begrudgingly, Mike eventually negotiates a good position that he is a co-CEO with Jim Balsillie, and they are going to try and take Rim to the next level and make BlackBerry a common household name in everyone's freaking life, which they did. And I have to say, I really want to point out some things in this movie. So I really enjoyed the banter and dialogue between all the characters. There was something about it, like the bullishness of Glenn Howerton as Jim Balsillie interacting with Jay Baruchel's meekness yet kind of pushovery version of Mike was really fun to watch play off of each other. And then you have Doug in there, who I don't really understand Doug's role in a sense, because there's parts of me where he was like really protective of Mike, but also I think he was protecting him because Mike was such a pushover. And you see that as the characters interact with each other over the course of the whole movie, that Doug sees like his pull or sway over Mike slowly lose to Jim. And it's this interesting triad of emotions and dialogue and banter and just like office play that goes on that we get to see. And the way Matt Johnson directs this film and showcases certain, like just the way the camera is really nice. I really liked it because it really made me feel like a fly on the wall. Like the camera's not set up in any like strict stock position. Here's the wide. It's moving around. It's jittery. It almost feels like we're in the conversation when we're not supposed to be in the conversation. And it's like, it's a surprise. Even to the other actors in this movie, it's almost like they don't know where the camera is and they don't know where to look at. And it's really nice. It's really interesting. And I really got into it. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's certain scenes too where the characters will look right in the camera. I don't think they know the camera's there, and I don't think they realize they're breaking the fourth wall, but it actually works because I think maybe everyone else in the audience really feels like we're a fly on the wall, and these are conversations that we are not allowed to be privy to, and it's like a secret, and that's how it felt, and I really, really liked how they did that, and it was really good. I highly recommend it just to watch that and how they really directed the flow of this movie, because it's almost like hidden camera, documentary, single cam, like The Office kind of style stuff. It's really interesting. I thought it was a really refreshing way to tell a movie, and that's where I call it the Social Network meets Letterkenny. You have the banter of the Canadian style, you have the Social Network ping-pongy dialogue, but you also have this really interesting Canadian POV with the directorial angles that that Matt was actually using, and I thought it was really, really cool. I'd just like to point out the music is good. I really wish they could have called Trent Reznor up and just been like, "Hey dog, can you hook us up with some Social Network music?" The music is good, but I feel like it was missing something. Actually, you know who? I can't remember who did the music for who is it? Game Night. I love the score of Game Night. If you've never watched that movie, it's a good movie. It's a good comedy movie, and the score in that movie is really good. And I kind of wish the guy who did that score did the score for this movie. It would have been awesome. The score is good as it is, but I think that would have took it up a little notch because it just needed that little techno vibe to it. You know what I'm saying? What else do I have in here? I just wrote down that I found Jim. I think I already mentioned it. Like Jim Balsilie's character in this movie is so over the top and so cocky and so arrogant that you're almost kind of like, I can understand why no one wanted to work with you and how Rim failed. You know what I'm saying? And so as the story goes on, we do follow the points of views of all these characters. And I don't want to ruin anything because I really want you guys to go and see this movie. I really want you to support this one. It's really damn good. You follow along certain career paths, like Jim Balsillie, as Blackberry's blowing up. It's called the Crackberry. He's making all the money, but his goal and his eyes are now set on becoming an NHL owner, a franchise owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And I do remember that when he was trying to buy that team and bring it to Hamilton, which is where I live. I remember that being a thing. So they played that off as like one of the reasons why Blackberry lost to the iPhone is because Jim Balsillie lost his eye on the prize of the future of smartphones. And Mike was set in the old ways that he didn't really see how data was going to be king, and he didn't realize it until the very last minute. And there's a lot of elements in this movie where it was like everyone was really distracted. They didn't know what was going on with Apple and the iPhone, and I guess Verizon or whoever was going to be the data provider at that point in time, maybe Comcast, I'm not too sure about who it was with the Americans down there, but they got blindsided. They really did. 2007 came and they got hit with that iPhone release, and I remember it. I was there. I wasn't even in the game industry yet. I used to be a game designer, so this movie also hits a little home for me. So I was in the game design industry. I just was coming out of school, and iPhone dropped. They were going to ruin Flash. I was a Flash developer at the time. So I just remember really paying attention to a lot of that stuff because I didn't know where I was going to be making video games for the longest of time because I was just making them in Flash. And I'm like, okay, here comes the smartphones because you could play my stuff on the Blackberry back in the day. So iPhone was like, nah, we're not doing that. So everyone was like, no, what do we got to do? Web HTML. And I was like, Web HTML is never going to work. And here we are. Anyways, the iPhone revolutionized everything, man. It was kind of crazy. And the movie is so much fun to watch because especially if you lived it, like I never owned a Blackberry, but I lived then. I was in my late 20s in the time that the Blackberry was a thing, and I was around for Crackberry, and I just thought this movie really kind of emphasized, really brought me back in time to those times, you know what I'm saying? And like also, I just want to say kudos to the entire Rim team. Like those guys were just some geniuses, you know what I'm saying, to actually pull off what they did. And anyways, I don't have anything else to say about this movie. There's no bads to this movie at all. None. Like there's gonna be times where I was like, man, I think Doug was such a dick to Mike, but was he protecting him or was he toxic? Or was he protecting his own self-interests? Because like Mike is such a pushover. So Doug was like using him, but also protecting him so he could have a leisurely life. I don't know, man. But the movie is great. It really is. I enjoyed every minute of it. This review is going too long. I'm just gushing over a good Canadian film. Sorry. There's a little Canadian for you there. Anyways, I'm going to go. I think the next movie I'm going to watch is either the White Man Can't Jump remake is coming out May 19th. And then I will definitely be seeing Fast X with my friend on the Tuesday. So those reviews will be coming in the future. Thank you everybody for watching. And whatever you're out there watching, dogs, enjoy it. Have a good time with it. I'm out. Peace out, everyone. Bye.